Yeah! Hey! Hey! Yaya Diamonds, dream chasers, we won't wait. Subscribe today before it's too late. Inspiration flowing just like the breeze. Chase your dreams and feel at ease.
Be good. Be very good.
I am trying. I don't know if it's working. I'm trying to be good. Please. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But my guests, top notch people here, and I know you do know, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. We have over 30,000 subscribers on YouTube already, and 400,000 people watching on Roku, few million people listening in other places all over the world, between Brazil all the way over to the Philippines, all the way to South Africa. Hey guys, what's up? What's up, Brazil, Germany, Paris, France, London? All you guys, I'm loving you. The United States, my peoples, and Chicago, Illinois, where I'm from. Thank you, Chi-Town, for watching and listening. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. My name is Yaya Diamond. I am the host of Dream Chasers Radio, which is this show right here. And we are all about people going after their dreams, their hopes, their goals, and their visions. Yes. And I have a guest today. Mr. Robert McGinnis is here, and he's going to be talking about 2 books that he's done. That's right, not 1, 2 books that he has done. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So you have 2 books. The first one's called Dropped Calls, and then the second one is called, I have it right here. It is called I don't want to say the first one I said before, so I want to make sure I say this right. The Attenuating Protagonist.
No, the attenuating Puritan.
See, I did the protagonist again. That was part of my question, though, by the way. Okay. The Attenuating Puritan, which has a protagonist in it, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But that's why I like it so much. I feel like we've done this before. Thank you again so much for coming on the show. Now, let me ask you a question. Before everything began, before you became an author, what was your life like before? And then right when you were on the cusp of saying, I have to do this.
Well, to tell you the truth is, I had grown up in New York. I moved to Northern California in the mid 70s, and I was living on the land as a back to the lander. After several years, my family had a tragedy where my partner was killed and my infant son was severely brain injured. And I had to move into town, and I took care of my son. He was 20 months old at the time of his accident, was with a log truck, and he had major head trauma and neuromuscular and neuroskeletal issues that we dealt with for decades afterwards. Um, the writing came as me trying to have a separate part of my life as opposed to just being full-time caregiver. So it allowed me a little bit of my own life and my own um, path forward. So, um,
Mm.
and I also felt as most of my life to be quiet and to accept things the way they were delivered. And as I got older, I realized that maybe the reason that you need to be a lifetime of wisdom before you became a writer in Ireland was so that you would have the wisdom to share.
Mm-hmm.
And as I lived a lifetime already, and I saw that people needed to be taught and directed, something that I didn't want to do in my younger days, but these days it seemed like it was urgent and necessity. So I stepped up to the plate and I put some messages out there that some of it are a little bit encrypted with the hope that people would not just read them once, but read them over and over again and try to pull little pieces out of them and see if they couldn't change their own lives. Um, in the hopes that a little bit of social change might extend our time here on this planet. And I don't mean personally, I mean as a species.
Right. Yeah, I
So
got you. Wow. Wow. That is wow. And I can understand that. I mean, you have to kind of grasp on the reality of what's going on with you and kind of try and keep a little bit of you in the mix. It's hard when you have a baby, when you have tragedies going on around you. You can get caught up and lose who you are, lose your identity. It happens to a lot of women.
well,
I
it to me it didn't really matter because when people were saying is that, oh, you wouldn't be able to do this job, and I really felt like, especially living in the woods, is that if you had farm animals, whatever you got is what you had.
right.
This felt
Hmm.
like it was another delay day of delivery, and this was what was on my plate. So there was never any question about what to do, and I didn't feel like I lost my identity. I felt like my identity was that of a caregiver. You
Gotcha.
so as I think it's if and in schools we do that all the time where we party every day, every week. It's somebody's birthday or a holiday's coming up or the
Mhm.
weekend's coming, and we made this party culture. And um, the therapists always ask, "How does that make you feel?" And I
Yeah.
think that we get so egocentrical
Mm,
that we don't know to let go, and that it's okay not to think about yourself for a minute or a week or a month or a year. Is just know that you are a part of everything at large, and it
mm,
doesn't need to be selfishly hoarded into my personal space.
gotcha.
And they
Mhm.
even divide the families up into making sure that the kid space is separate from the adults and stuff. And I don't think there's any other place in biology where it's like that. So I think that the ego is very problematic lots of times.
Wow. That's a different answer than what a woman would give, especially a mom. Like when a mom, and that's very good. I love that because I get to understand more about different perspectives. You know what I mean? A woman loses herself by the time her kids turn 18 and they start going on their own. For 18 years of her life, she's never thought about herself. So
Mhm.
that selfish part of her, it doesn't exist during the time when she's raising her child. And if her child is Down syndrome or something like that, then she never really gets herself back.
Last week, my son turned 40.
Mm.
So let me just give you an example of it doesn't just end at 18. He's
Well,
still
yeah.
he's still here in the house, and I still do the cooking and the cleaning, and that
Oh, he's blessed.
I'm still the caregiver.
He's blessed. He's blessed. Cause I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that like, okay, you turn 18, get out.
Yeah, and to me that's horrible.
It is horrible. It is horrible. I just think that like around the age of 18, 19 years old, they begin to kind of do their own little things. And I've had two children that around that time they started doing their own thing.
And,
So it
and
was
it's
like,
fine to
okay,
do their own thing, but we have to remember that the executive functions haven't fully
yeah,
formed yet. They have another at least 7 years to go, and handing
I
over
was
the
gonna talk
adult questions at that age is not necessarily a smart thing to do.
well, then that means that my daughter should move back into the house.
Uh, Maybe not move in the house, but she should still be answering to someone.
That's funny. Oh my gosh, that is so funny. So you have your book.
So
Oh,
what
go
would
ahead.
she do if you what would she do if you moved into her house?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think she would want me to move into her house.
Of course not.
No, I don't think that's gonna work. But you have two books, so we're gonna be talking about that today. One is called Drop Calls. Tell me about this book.
Well, Drop Calls is a small collection of short stories, and each one was designed to point to a time that the Lord asked us to do something, and we lost the communication.
Mm,
And in that, like I said, it should be read over and over again, and we should see the parts that we weren't clear on, and why that I thought we were dropping the call um, at different times. So um, the first story is 5 G's over Walden Pond, and it's basically about cell phones, and a guy lives in a homeless camp by Walden Pond because he wants to do what Thoreau did and live a life more simply. And he doesn't take a cell phone with him, but he'd been addicted to it, so he was feeling the pains of not having his cell phone. But he realized when he was out in the woods is that there's not a day that goes by that he's not continually interrupted by traffic noise, other people's cell phones, satellites at night when he's sleeping, and that the phones have taken over, and that quiet that Thoreau got to experience no longer existed. And it doesn't exist in our behaviors either, in that quietness that gave the great depth of thought that Thoreau had, because we are reactive and we are constantly reacting to something and not being able to hear our inner selves for long periods of time. That's another part that's missing in our culture now, is the long periods of aloneness and quietness. So I wanted to point that out. I have it as a fiction story.
Mm-hmm.
Things, go off the rails there, and all of a sudden we find that the biologic function of water isn't working as it should, and it's causing different species to have mass extinctions and problems throughout the biologic world. So, um, again, it's a fiction story, but I
Right.
really wanted to point out that. And the other thing that I always point to with the cell phones is the loss of phylogenetic memories. And
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to say that phones cause short term memories and stuff, but when we're talking about 5G networks and EMFs and those sorts of things, we know they can alter the DNA. And altered DNA has the potential to be erasing a phylogenetic memory that is encoded in it. And then as it changes, is that memory no longer exists. So we have the ability to lose our common sense, our innate fears of things, spiders and snakes and things that that took a million years to evolve to develop those innate fears. And because of convenience and selfishness, we're willing to sacrifice what we were gifted in a million years of evolution. So um, I wanted to point those things out. I don't know if the readers will get those points without revisiting them over and over again, and really thinking about what that means.
Right. Right. I
Uh,
think common sense was gone a long time ago. I'm sorry.
yes. And it was a curse and not a gift.
Oh my gosh, yes. Wow, wow. So the collection of stories, what do you want people to get from that? Like what direction do you want people to go in? Because I think that there's a lot there that
Well,
can that they can learn.
the first story is for the Luddites. Is let's appreciate the people that are thinking maybe all this technology isn't a good thing. The second story is more based on our. To me, it's more based on losing our democracy, and
Mhm,
it's a story that I wrote that um, mimics the presidency at this point. And
mhm,
it's the dream catchers of Lago Amar. And I had read some books, The Frontiersman of New York, which came out, I think, in 1882, and The
mhm,
Life of Brant, which came out in 1838. And I was really fascinated by those. And uh, one of the things in the story, and these are history books, and the Life of Brant came out in a time where people that were in the Revolutionary War were still alive and could be interviewed, and could hand stories down from them.
mhm,
At one point, a parcel of scalps were recovered by the American revolutionaries, and they were the ones that were being scalped. And these scalps were heading to Canada, and they were getting paid for them, and it was about $8 a piece, unless it was a military person or an officer, where they could get up to $20. In one parcel, they recovered 1,599 scalps, and 29 of them were infants. And Brant said is that, I'm a great warrior, but I would never fight women and I would never fight children. And that's when they were realizing that it was English soldiers that would dress up as Indians and take the scalps and then take them up to Canada and get $8 a piece for them. Um, so in my story, as I have a young kid, I want to call him because his executive functions haven't formed yet, and he
Mhm.
goes to another state and he's armed with an automatic weapon and he's walking the streets and the the police are giving him water bottles and condoning his efforts for keeping down the revolutionaries. And I quote Mao is that every revolution is a just war, every counter revolution is an unjust war. And for the police to be condoning his attempts to keep down the revolution makes it they're working for the counter revolution, which is an unjust war. So at any rate, is the czar is so impressed with his work that he invites him down to his resort, and even though he's only 17, is he's going down to rub elbows with the best of the best, So he wants to get a gift to them that would have historic value. So he scalps the two people that he killed on the streets that night and takes the scalps with him. He fastens them into willow hoops and makes dream catchers out of them. And he, like the Indians did, paint a black circle around the circumference because they died at night, and a couple of dots because they died by gunfire, and then some lines to represent that they were defending the streets when they were killed. So he takes those down and presents them to the Tsar, and the Tsar is so impressed that he hangs one in the east window with the hair facing in, and one in the west window with the hair facing out. And it's interesting to me is because I was saying, like King George, who was in monetizing the taking of scalps, was an egotist, and all the universal signalings went to him. So he was afferent, and he was um, of material. So he was material, and he was transitory because the universe doesn't exist like that. So the moment the hair facing in, it starts oscillating and it starts sending the truth of the universe to him like a laser beam. And
Wow.
it's so much information so fast that it causes him to have seizures, and he falls away from his desk and he's not sure what struck him. But when he goes back in his office, he can no longer look at that scalp, and he directs his eyes to the west of the room where the other scalp hangs, and that's facing the other way, and it's one man's life at talking speed, and he grows a relationship with this person that had passed. And he was feeling like it was a more honest and open relationship than he'd ever had with any living friend of his. And all of a sudden, he's growing empathy for the revolutionaries, which was, something that was unheard of. But it hits a nerve because it's so human and so real. So when he goes from being the egotist like King George to the altruist, and he goes from the afferent to the efferent, and he goes from material to ethereal, and he goes from transitory to eternal, because that's how the universe extends itself. So that was like to me the major turning point of the story, and it's something that we all need to think about because there's not really room for the egotist in this world, and there's no way to pass the love on to each other
Yeah.
in the world of the egotist. So be aware of that when you see it around, and think that's what we're trying not to do. And then the catch of it all is, I ask, if you see the cover of that book, there's a dream catcher hanging in that window in that building there, and I ask, whose scalp is that?
Oh.
And nobody's been able to get it right.
Mm.
But there's only two possible people that it could be, and one is Joseph Rosenbaum, and one is Anthony Huber, the two people that were killed in the Black Lives Matter protest in
Wow.
Kenosha, Wisconsin. Um, so it was in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, just in the book review section.
Hmm.
Inside the front cover, there's a little picture of the book, and I'm thinking, well, I actually got my scalp in the New York Times, and I thought that was pretty good. But still, is I don't think anybody really realizes what is there and why it's there.
Wow.
Um, so um, anyway, that's the second story in the book, and it goes on. There's a couple other things going on. It's a very short story, you know. And then
Mm-hmm.
the third story was really about um, the DNA that we have, and if you just ask yourself, is that if we say that life is sacred and precious, and
Yeah.
every living thing is sacred and precious, when did we start having spirituality? And did spirituality exist in the primordial soup with the first single cell um, uh, existence,
Hmm.
or was it something that was cultivated over millions of years and only exists in the larger life forms, you know? And to me, is a single cell that has life should be in a position to give thanks. And
Wow.
and that's the question there. So I had, the mayhem in the streets and the civilizations falling apart and people are sick and everything, and it was because a apple tree was told that a species that it creates a god in his own image and then turns his back on him should no longer be enabled. So because of that, the food stopped giving nutrition, and it
Hmm.
was making all the people starve because the plant life and the animals were no longer going to be feeding us, and until we got the message. And then most of the people die off, but there's a couple people that survive. And when they do, and they no longer need to rule the roost, so to speak, is then nutrition was again brought back to them. So, um,
Wow. And you thought
anyway,
of all of this. This is amazing. This to me is amazing. I mean, to come up with stories like that, the scalping and all of that. I mean, some of it is got like some factual meaning though. Am I correct?
well, it all has meaning to me,
Right. Of
and
course.
yes, and when you read about taking 1,600 scalps and 29 of them infants, you know, yes, that means something, you know,
Yeah, it does.
and it's so funny how we could only be 150 or 170 years away from that and not even have a clue, and not even
Mm.
want to have a clue, and then we can see some of the same horrific things going on around the world,
Yeah.
and we try to remove ourselves from it and deny it and isolate from it and not really understand how that happens and why it would happen, and not being able to have any control over it. And part of the control over it is knowledge, and it's the power of knowledge to be able to uh, present it and to speak about it and to um, try to remind people that we are civilized. We didn't evolve for millions of years to go backwards. We evolved for millions of years because we know better, and now we know better. And that's a large responsibility, and it should be shared by everyone. And is it just takes one bad apple, as they say, um, but we need to work in unity, marching towards the same place. And I use the word marching, and I hate to use that word because it's so militaristic, but let's just say moving in the direction towards the light
Yeah.
would, and I think that's what's missing right now from a lot of us. And they held so many people captive with the economy,
Mm.
um, that people don't have time to have quiet to themselves to say is, if I had time, if I had ability, who would I be, who would I want to be,
Yeah.
and who would I want to teach my children to be like, you know
Hmm.
um, and and I know there's many teachers out there, and
Yeah,
and a lot of them do really good work. Um, but again, it takes all of us, and sometimes we really have to put ourselves in a position of sacrifice to get to where we need to be.
definitely, definitely. You have another book called The Attenuating Puritan. I got that right this time. But I wanted
Yes,
to ask you because I'm looking at the cover of it and I think I see something. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. It's upside down. Wait, on the back of his garment there's is that the Shroud of Turin?
that's like the Shroud of Turin exactly, and the attenuating Puritan puts himself in harm's way, attenuating toxins in the environment,
Oh.
toxins in our food sources, uh, drugs that we shouldn't be doing. And it's his mission in life. And I say in the book that he's slightly autistic and ADHD and he gets stuck. But from attenuating emulsifiers like polysorbate 80,
Mm,
he's developed colon cancer
oh
and
my
he bleeds the face of Jesus because of his cancer.
god. Mm,
And, so yes, and he always says, the Lord has my back because the Lord always has his back. Um, but he's a character that I really um, appreciate and admired. My mom warned me not to become that guy, so I'm trying not to be him. But his
adore.
story's interesting. Like I said, he's a little bit autistic, so he
Mm,
has problems with his social skills. He's never, or sometimes he is, but he's usually not appropriate all the time. And
mm,
he starts out, he's um, up near the Love Canal, upstate New York, and he's eating Forbes and whatever he can find. And he's been there for about 40 years, for about 40 days. And his body's all festered up and blistered up because he's sick and he's getting too weak to eat. And he goes to the side of the road, and it's raining and the water's running off the road and it's making an oil slick in the drainage ditch. And he's like asking God, how can I do this and what should I do? And the water reminds him that he is getting a calling and he should go to Flint, Michigan, and to clean as much water as he can in Flint because the water is so full of metals, lead in particular. So he hitchhikes over to Flint, Michigan, and has this idea that he's going to clean all the water up. And then he gets to the reality that he can't possibly do that. So he
mm,
starts breaking into churches and using a McDonald's straw. He's drinking all the water out of the stoops and out of the baptismal baths. And he's just, going through it, doing the best he can, absorbing as much as he can. And he goes and he sleeps out under the power lines because he's basically a homeless guy. And he gets an epiphany that there's glyphosate in the communion hosts because they're made out of wheat. And
oh
then
my
all
goodness.
he gets this thing that he's going to attenuate as many of the communion hosts as he can
Mm,
to save the people
mm,
from ingest. And why would God present Himself in a product that's known to cause cancer? Uh,
right.
it just when yeah. And I was saying is that you look at life and you laugh at things, and then when you realize what you're laughing at, you start crying, and then you start crying so much that you start laughing, and then you realize how it's all absurd and that we have to weave our way through this absurdity to get from the beginning to the end of it without maintaining the ability to laugh at ourselves and trying not to cry at ourselves at the same time. So so he goes there, and I looked up a bed and breakfast or an Airbnb in
Mm,
Flint, Michigan. And the first one that I found looking on the computer was one, and this is for real, where the person wanted to go on vacation with his wife. She just got diagnosed with cancer. So they had to cancel their trip, and he put an infrared sauna in his place. And when she passed, they rented it out as an Airbnb. And it just shows you how um, real life some of this is and how close it is. But at any rate, he books a room there and he orders a couple of cases of unconsecrated communion hosts from Amazon. And they're coming in big boxes with 48 little boxes with 1,000 in each in a case. And he orders several cases. And the other thing that was attenuating and cleaning the attenuation of glyphosate, which was in the Roundup, which was in the wheat crops, which is why the communion hosts were contaminated, was sauerkraut juice.
Mm.
So he orders cases of sauerkraut juice. And the people at the Airbnb don't hear from him for 4 days, and they're wondering if something's going on. They knock on his door, he doesn't answer. They yell to him, he doesn't answer. So they let themselves into his room, and the bed hadn't been slept in. And they find him, and he's passed out in the infrared sauna with communion hosts plastered to his naked body and empty jars of sauerkraut juice lying on the floor. So that was his effort to attenuate the glyphosate in the communion hosts at that point,
Wow.
And they just thought he was crazy, but after they saw what he was doing, they didn't feel threatened by him,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up putting a little camera in him, and he didn't know he had it, but everywhere he went, they were watching what crazy things this guy was doing, and of course, he was continuing to attenuate and um, do crazy stuff, and then you could go online and you could go to leper.com. And if you submitted a video catching him doing something crazy, you could get cash incentives.
Wow.
So they're following this crazy guy around and trying to
Wow.
capitalize on him. Um, he ends up having liver failure, and by now he's in Minnesota, and he argues with the doctors at the hospital because he can't stop attenuating, and they're not going to give him a new liver if he can't stop. So he ends up just getting in a big fight there and moving on. And then he goes down to Oklahoma City where he has the Sermon on the Heap, and he didn't know that he was still being followed, but some promoters had everybody meet in Oklahoma City. And when he tried to get away from them, he cut a hole in a fence in a landfill, and he ended up climbing on top of a heap. And more than 10,000 people showed up, and he spoke to the crowd, and it was a religious experience, let's say,
I got you.
you know. So
Wow.
So he goes there. Anyway, from there, a couple other things happen, and the next thing he's just solo traveling from Superfund site to Superfund site in Colorado. So he's going to Rocky Flats, and he's going to the Urbana mines, and um, to all these places that are contaminated, which they were supposedly cleaning up, but there's still contaminants there and around. Rocky Flats is um, there was a um, fire in a nuclear facility in the 1950s, and it's said to cloud up that blew eastwardly and contaminated the soil. And what they did with it was they made it a wildlife refuge. You
Mm.
know, the half life was more than 20,000 years that it was going to be contaminated. But no one was looking at the Gleason scale on all those large mammals. They were just appreciating that there was elk and large game over there, and it looks nice, but you wouldn't think that it was radioactive, and you'd be, and they don't even want to tell you that, but it's just there. So he's doing
Wow.
all of that. Then he has issues with fertility, and I love that scene, but I'm not going to even go into it. And then from there he goes over to Burning Man, which is another scene, and we
Wow.
won't even go there. But
No.
at the end of it, he ends up with his fertility issues. The Lord always had his back. He was back working again, and he had a young wife, and he went over to Berkeley. And at the end of the story, him and his young wife had
Oh, don't,
jeans.
don't, 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 no, no, no. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Okay,
Don't say it. Don't say
okay,
it.
I
Don't
won't.
say it. But wow. just to go through this, I mean, what went through your mind when you were like, I'm going to have this guy take on all of the badness of this earth as much as possible? I mean, was that something that you thought that maybe a
Well,
superhero or
there
something?
was a whole bunch of different thought processes that went through there,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of times, and people have said since, he should have been with a team of people that was doing this. And I said, I could write that book a whole bunch of different ways, but the most powerful way is for one person, undeterred, on one mission, and that is the most powerful because we can all be him, you
Mm,
know, and we don't have to do it all ourselves.
right.
But what he really teaches is the responsibility, that it's our responsibility. And he teaches not to be deterred whether people are laughing at him or taking movies of him or telling him he's nuts or he shouldn't be doing that, because his mission, and like I said, he was autistic and
Mm-hmm.
ADHD and stuck on a mission, was to clean up the Garden of Eden. And
Oh,
he never stopped doing that. And he even looked at drugs and alcohol as things that shouldn't be in the Garden of Eden. And therefore, they needed to be attenuated and removed from our presence, you know? And if there was no other way to get that done than to consume them himself, that's what he was going to do. And it
mm,
was never about partying or getting high or anything else. It was about cleaning till it was immaculate, the Garden of Eden, and that's the message, and that's
wow.
and the symbolism of the sacrifice that he was willing to make, and he wasn't afraid to get as sick as he could get because he believed that the Lord wanted this mission done, and he believed he was the necessary machinery to do that.
Mm,
So
wow.
it is in the sequel of it. The story is a lot different, but I have he had left the country at the end of the last book, and he comes back, and people had started the attenuators, the puritanical school of the attenuators. And they're teaching people, and they're sitting in front of large screen TVs looking at lysosomes and polysomes, and they're trying to envision their cells being able to take on more toxics,
Wow.
break them down, and then to clean them out. So they're trying not to think about it. They're trying to only biologically respond to it in the most productive way possible. So I really wanted to highlight that and the use of our bodies to clean up the toxins and have enough faith that you can fast and heal. And maybe you won't be 100%, but could get you back up to 98% and you could continue. So um,
Wow.
and and then they start teaching at nursing homes, and they're giving old people the opportunity to do something worthwhile for their grandchildren and their great grandchildren by participating in the cleanup efforts and using every last bit of life they have to keep the flame burning.
Wow. That is a deep. Those they're both deep. They're both deep. Both of your books are deep. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. They have depth to them. I mean, there's like, wow. I mean, you
Well,
have
I think if I was 30 and I wrote a fantasy, it would be swashbuckling and all of that. But when you're my age and you're trying to teach and you're trying to put a message out there, is it has to have substance. It has to be something you can bite into, and it has to um, leave something behind. So I tried to make sure that what I said would resonate and that it would have legs. It would have its own future. So I was trying to build that. Let's see if that happens.
definitely, definitely. So both of your books can be found on Amazon and like maybe Barnes and Nobles and places like that as well.
Yes. Yep. And all the major booksellers, I think, have them. Thrift Books and Walmart, and so I think you can find them pretty
Okay.
much anywhere.
Awesome. We're going to put the links in the description box. So it's Drop Calls and the Attenuating Puritan. And we're going to make sure that you guys have the links to those so that it'll be easy for you to find those books. And if you are interested in something that may change your entire thought pattern in world, because this will, then go ahead and check that out for yourselves. Wow, this is like superhero stuff to me. That's what that is. That's superhero stuff to me, because I think that superheroes, especially in the movies and things like that, like with Superman or the Fantastic Four, or you know what I mean, like the Hulk, and these people, you think that they can actually do this and get this, and that's just amazing, amazing. I love it. I think they should be superheroes.
Well, that was suggested. Is why don't we have a team of people be superheroes to do this?
Exactly.
And again, and it's funny is because one of the people I was interested in doing a movie, they gave the Puritan a name, and I said, is you really miss the entire point of it. If he has a name, we can't all be that person, So let's not give him a name.
Right.
Let's all be him.
Wow. I
And
agree.
I don't know why, but I keep losing my speakers now.
Ah, well, we're
Can
almost
you hear
done.
me? I
I
can't
can
hear
hear you.
you.
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Not a problem. Wow. Well, Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. You got me?
I think so. I can hear you, but I don't see me anymore.
Oh,
Um,
I got you. I got you. Well, thank you so
okay,
much,
good.
Robert, for being on the show. I appreciate it so much for you being here and for taking the time out to be here and to, tell us about your books. Again, that's Dropped Calls and the Attenuating Puritan. We're going to put the links in the description box below. And thank you again so much, Robert, for being here. I appreciate it so very much. And until next time, guys, don't forget to dare to be different. Bye.